So, when you think of a global car company, what immediately springs to mind? Is it like cutting edge design, raw speed, maybe the roar of an engine?
Probably not environmental sustainability, right?
Right.
Or zero waste future.
Yeah, exactly. For many, it's not the first association. But today on the deep dive, we're going to try and shift that perspective a bit.
That's right. This deep dive is all about Toyota's, well, their really comprehensive environmental and operational strategies. Stuff that goes way beyond just the cars themselves.
hmm We've pulled insights from their recent environmental report, their latest financial summary, and some really interesting details on the legendary Toyota production system.
Yeah, and our mission really is to uncover how a global giant like Toyota is tackling this, immense challenge of environmental sustainability.
Not just in their cars, but across the whole business.
Exactly. Across the entire ecosystem. You'll discover the specific ambitious targets they've set, the innovative projects they're rolling out, and crucially, how their financial health sort of acts as the engine for all this.
Okay, let's unpack this. Maybe start by setting the stage. Toyota's got this long-standing global presence. Toyota Motor Thailand, for example, they've been there over 60 years.
Right, and for decades, Toyota's global policy has had this, well, this clear focus, environmental sustainability and going carbon neutral.
What's really interesting, though, is that this isn't some new trendy thing for them, is it?
Not at all. Their environmental efforts actually kicked off way back in the 1970s.
70s, wow.
Yeah, so that means they've spent over 50 years actively, developing and commercializing low-carbon tech, green technologies. It's a deep, long-term thing that started way before it became a big global buzzword.
Absolutely. And a major turning point, I guess, was October 2015 when they announced the Toyota Environmental Challenge 2050.
Right, and that's incredibly ambitious. The aim isn't just zero environmental impact.
Get this, it's a net positive impact from their manufacturing. I mean, how unusual is that for a company this big, aiming beyond just zero to actually be net positive? What does that even mean in practice?
That's a great question. Because net positive, well, it goes way further than just minimizing harm, right? It sort of suggests their operations would actually improve the environment, maybe putting back more resources than they use or actively restoring ecosystems. It's definitely a high bar.
And you can see the steps towards it in their history, can't you?
Yeah, looking at their milestones, you see this steady progression. Like back in 1992, they founded Toyota Metal Co., Ltd.
The first end-of-life vehicle shredding plant, wasn't it?
Exactly, long before those were common.
And then 1997, everyone remembers that.
The Prius.
Yeah, the world's first mass-produced hybrid, it completely changed the game for vehicle efficiency, didn't it? Paved the way for electrification.
It really did. And by 99, they were already bringing that hybrid tech to Thailand. Led to, over 249,000 hybrid sales there by 2022.
Wow.
Then in 2014, they launched the MRAI.
The fuel cell electric vehicle, the FCEV, showing they're looking at hydrogen too.
Right, exploring multiple paths, not just betting on one thing.
And what really shows how serious they are. In 2021, Toyota Motor Corporation actually pulled their plant carbon neutrality goal forward by 15 years.
Yeah, aiming for 2035 instead of 2050.
I mean, what kind of internal shifts or, breakthroughs allow a company to do that, to make such an aggressive change?
Well, that kind of speed up, it probably suggests a mix of things. Maturing tech, maybe. Better internal efficiencies.
And maybe just that deep corporate philosophy pushing them.
Could be. That drive to push boundaries. And they didn't stop there. In 2023, more innovation, new models like the Innova Xenix, Alphard, Yaris Cross, all with hybrid systems.
And they announced 70 new electrified models planned.
Yeah, clearly moving on lots of fronts at once.
But, okay, how does a company the size of Toyota even begin to tackle these huge multi-decade goals?
Well, it comes down to their classic approach, doesn't it? Yeah, breaking down the huge task into smaller, manageable chunks, measurable challenges.
Right. The Environmental Challenge 2050 isn't just one big target. It's, 6 specific challenges?
It's exactly 6 challenges with detailed plans to hit milestones by 2030. And these plans aren't set in stone. They adjust them every 5 years.
So the current one is their 7th plan, covering 2022 to 2026.
That kind of detailed planning, it's absolutely vital to turn those big dreams into actual steps. So let's dive into Challenge 1, new vehicle zero CO2 emissions.
Okay.
The ultimate goal here, cut average CO2 emissions per new vehicle by a massive 90% by 2050. compared to 2010 levels.
90% by 2050. That's not just ambitious, it completely changes how cars are designed and powered.
It really does.
And look at their 2030 milestone just to get there. Over 5.5 million annual global sales of electrified vehicles.
Including over 1 million zero-emission vehicles.
Plus, a 35% or more cut in CO2 emissions per kilometer from new vehicles. That's a huge retooling of their whole lineup.
Absolutely. And their pathway to do this, it emphasizes pushing all sorts of electrified tech faster.
Right, not just one type.
No, everything from hybrids to HEVs, combining gas and electric, to plug-in hybrids, PHEVs, with more electric range.
To full battery electric, BEVs.
And even fuel cell electric vehicles, FCEVs, running on hydrogen.
So it's a real multi-pronged approach, trying to meet different needs and different energy situations around the world rather than just betting on one horse.
Exactly. Strategically diverse.
Okay, moving to challenge 2. The Life Cycle Zero CO2 Emissions Challenge.
Right. This one goes way beyond just the tailpipe emissions.
Oh, yeah. This aims to completely eliminate CO2 emissions throughout the entire vehicle life cycle.
From start to finish.
Yeah.
Like materials, manufacturing, assembly, maintenance, even disposal and recycling.
The whole 9 yards.
Wow. That sounds incredibly complicated, especially with a global car company's supply chain.
It is incredibly complex. Their 2030 milestone for this one is to cut CO2 by 25% or more over that whole life cycle compared to 2013.
So how are they actually doing that? What are the specifics?
Well, take logistics, for example. They're increasing cargo capacity in trucks, upgrading 6-wheel trucks from 7.4 meters to 8.4 meters. That alone cuts 230 tons of CO2 a year.
Boosting loading efficiency, too, from like 83% up to 93%, and cutting transport distances, like setting up a new component assembly factory in Rayong that saves 10 tons of CO2 a year just by shortening routes.
And this life cycle thinking, it extends right down to the dealerships, too, doesn't it? Their customer-facing side.
Absolutely. You mentioned Thailand. They have 457 service centers there, handling millions of services every year.
So what are they doing?
Well, they're actively training environmental officers across the country on environmental laws, policies managing noise and air pollution, proper waste and wastewater handling.
So it's not just the factory floor, it's the whole network.
Critical point.
Yeah.
And it's not just training. These dealerships are doing real energy reduction things, switching to LED lights, controlling inefficient equipment, even recycling water.
And solar panels.
Yeah, what's really impressive is 38 dealerships in 30 provinces are already using solar. And the goal is for all dealerships to access solar electricity by 2026.
Which hits their 2050 carbon goal, but also cuts costs, right? Electricity bills, emissions.
Exactly. It's a win-win, which makes it easier to push forward.
And their suppliers are a huge piece of this puzzle, too.
Absolutely critical. They're working really closely with them to get carbon neutrality through the whole production chain by 2050.
Any results so far?
Yeah. In 2022 alone, suppliers cut CO2 by over 120,000 tons. Mostly through those daily energy-saving Kaizen improvements and using more solar.
Kaizen again, that continuous improvement idea.
Right. And Toyota doesn't just tell them to do it, they help them. They share success stories, give annual rewards for suppliers hitting CO2 targets.
Like what kind of things are suppliers doing?
Well, for instance, Enkai Taico Ltd. put in heat exchangers to capture waste heat from exhaust gas, cut their gas use by 20%.
Nice.
And Siam Furukawa Co. Ltd. installed fiberglass insulation to reduce heat loss in furnaces. Simple things, too, like switching from fluorescent lights to LEDs across the board.
It all adds up.
It does. And beyond their own operations, Toyota, its suppliers, and the Toyota Cooperation Club planted over 100,000 trees together. Part of the 60th anniversary project shows that community effort.
Okay, so beyond the vehicles, beyond the supply chain.
Yeah.
The manufacturing plants themselves are a big part of this. Challenge 3. Plant zero CO2 emissions.
Yep. The goal here is zero CO2 in manufacturing, using innovative tech, Kaizen again, and efficient use of clean and renewable energy.
So, more solar.
Definitely. In 2022, Toyota Motor Thailand invested in over 8.41 megawatts of solar farms on land and rooftops.
And how much CO2 did that cut?
Over 5,500 tons of CO2 equivalent per year. Brings their total solar production capacity up to 33.7 megawatts.
And they're not stopping there, are they?
No way. They've got ongoing construction for another 18 megawatts of solar farms, plus almost 4 megawatts more rooftop solar.
And they're also looking at buying clean energy directly.
Right. Through power purchasing agreements, PPAs with partners, they're aiming for a 15% cut in electricity costs that way, too.
Ah, so there's that financial incentive again, alongside the environmental one. That synergy must really help justify these big investments internally, right?
Absolutely. When green initiatives also save money, It just makes a powerful business case, helps speed things up. It's that dual benefit that really drives change.
Okay.
Which leads us nicely into Challenge 4, which is all about minimizing and optimizing water usage.
Right. Use less water, treat wastewater properly before returning it to nature, and have a positive impact on local water environments, even community water issues.
Exactly. Their 2030 milestones here include finishing water quantity measures at 4 key plants and quality checks at 22 plants that discharge into rivers. Plus, talking actively with the community.
So it's internal process and external engagement.
Right. And a really concrete example is at their Banfo plant. They collect rainwater from the factory roof during the rainy season
To use for what?
to reduce tap water use in their cooling towers. That initiative alone saves about 5,240 cubic meters of tap water a year.
Which works out to, what, 0.028 cubic meters per car. Seems small per unit.
It does, but when you're making millions of vehicles, it adds up to a substantial amount. That's the scale effect.
Makes sense. Okay, next up, Challenge 5. Establishing a recycling-based society and systems.
Right. This is about preventing environmental impact from cars at the end of their life, creating a recycling society and pushing their Toyota Global Car-to-Car Recycle Project, TCCR.
Car to car. So closing the loop entirely.
Pretty much. This challenge focuses on things like using eco-friendly materials right from the start,
Designing parts to last longer.
developing advanced recycling tech,
Mhm.
and actually making new vehicles from parts recovered from old ones.
And the 2030 goals for this?
Complete global battery collection and recycling systems, and establish 30 model facilities worldwide for handling end-of-life vehicles properly.
What really caught my eye here was their waste-to-energy project, converting waste into fuel.
Yeah, general waste, factory waste, office waste, turning it into fuel for electricity or heat, or sometimes co-incinerating it with coal to use less coal.
But the really big deal here, Toyota hasn't sent waste to landfill for over 20 years.
Correct. For over 2 decades, no landfilling. They maximize waste utilization, totally in line with the circular economy concept.
Okay, for listeners maybe not familiar, what's the core idea of a circular economy and why is that no landfilling policy such a big achievement?
Well, the circular economy basically aims to keep resources in use for as long as possible, get the maximum value from them while they're in use, then recover and regenerate the products and materials at the end.
So eliminate waste by design?
Exactly. So for a company Toyota's size, stopping landfilling for 2 decades, that's a massive operational feat. It means they've systematically figured out how to reuse, recycle, or convert pretty much all their waste. It shows a really mature, integrated approach to managing resources.
Okay, moving to the final and maybe the broadest challenge. Challenge 6. Establishing a future society in harmony with nature.
Right. This is about conserving natural environments, promoting coexistence with nature, and expanding their connecting projects. It really speaks to their wider societal impact.
What are these connecting projects?
There are 3 main ones: Toyota Greenwave, Toyota Today for Tomorrow, and Toyota ESD. That's Education for Sustainable Development.
Okay.
And this challenge also includes this incredibly ambitious vision to make Pattaya, the major city in Thailand, a carbon-neutral city.
Whoa, making an entire city carbon neutral. That's a massive undertaking. How do they even approach that?
Well, for this Pattaya decarbonized sustainable city vision, they're using that multiple pathways approach, again, for transport, supporting everything from HEVs, PHEVs to FCEVs.
So supporting electric public transport, too.
Yes, and establishing Thailand's first hydrogen refueling station there. Plus lots of EV charging stations in Pattaya, really trying to build that whole EV ecosystem, infrastructure, and choice.
And as part of their 60th anniversary in Thailand, they launched another project.
Right, the Toyota 60 Years Sustainable Environmental Community Project. This develops carbon-neutral model communities, focusing on 4 things: clean air, green trees, zero waste, and renewable energy.
And they've started this already.
Yeah, started with 4 model locations. Plan is to expand to 6 more by 2024, and eventually 60 communities across Thailand, all to support Thailand's own 2050 carbon neutrality goal.
They also ran a public campaign, Lod Plenlock.
Yeah, that ran for 3 months in 2023. Got over 51,000 people involved in almost 366,000 activities to cut CO2 in daily life.
Like what kind of activities?
Things across 5 areas: cutting plastic use, saving energy, sustainable transport, adding green spaces, and sustainable consumption.
And did it make a difference?
Yeah, the campaign resulted in cutting about 377,177 kilograms of CO2. That's a real impact from getting the public involved directly.
That's impressive. And finally, there's the mangrove project.
Right, the Toyota Mangrove Reforestation Project at Bangpoo. It's been going for 16 years, since 2004.
16 years.
Yeah, long-term collaboration. They planted nearly 743,000 trees, absorbing over 9,600 tons of CO2 every year. Just in 2022, they had an event with 3,000 people planting 60,000 trees. Shows that long-term community partnership.
Okay, so we've heard about all these incredibly extensive long-term environmental initiatives, which naturally raises the question, how does a company actually fund all this, these massive projects?
Exactly. This brings us to the financial engine driving Toyota's sustainability efforts. Because, strong financial performance isn't just about profit, it's absolutely essential to make these ambitious projects happen.
And looking at their FY 2024 numbers, that's April 2023 to March 2024, the figures are pretty impressive, aren't they?
They really are. Consolidated vehicle sales were up 7%, over 9.4 million units globally. Overseas sales up over 10%.
And that drove revenue up significantly.
Yeah, sales revenues hit over 45 trillion yen. That's a big jump, 21.4%.
And operating income.
Even more striking, it soared 96.4% to over 5.3 trillion yen. Largely thanks to strong marketing and, favorable exchange rates help too.
So that kind of financial muscle, it lets them absorb the huge upfront costs of developing green tech, overhauling supply chains, turning those goals into real investments.
Absolutely. It's the fuel. It transforms abstract environmental goals into tangible action.
Their net income basically doubled too, right? Up over 100% to nearly 5 trillion yen.
Remarkable increase.
And their cash position looks strong, grew by over 25% and more than 9.4 trillion yen. Lots of liquidity for future investments.
Right. So when you see a company doubling net income, growing cash reserves like that,
Yeah.
what does that signal about their ability to actually deliver on these long-term environmental promises?
Well, it signals capacity, obviously, but maybe something more.
Deep strategic optionality, I'd say. It's not just one good year. It's like a strategic fuel injection. This level of financial health means they have the capital to really invest heavily in R&D for the next green tech.
Retool factories for carbon neutrality.
Absorb the costs of complex circular economy stuff. Even if those investments don't pay off immediately in the short term, it gives them the freedom, really, to prioritize long-term sustainability.
And geographically, things look pretty good across most major markets. Japan, North America, Europe all saw big jumps in sales and operating income.
Yeah, often driven by marketing and currency rates, as you said. Asia saw healthy increases, too.
Only the other regions category was a bit mixed. Sales up, but income down.
Right, that includes places like Latin America, Africa. Sales grew, but local factors like inflation in Argentina hit the operating income there. But overall, that global strength means they can weather regional issues and keep funding the big goals.
It's also worth mentioning they adopted IFRS for their financial reporting back in 2021, right? For better international comparison.
Good point. Improves transparency. And another sign of financial strength just recently, May 2024, they decided to repurchase a load of shares and retire treasury stock. Signals confidence and focus on shareholder value.
Okay, so all these impressive environmental targets, the strong financials backing them up, they don't just appear out of nowhere. They're rooted deep down in a core philosophy, aren't they? The Toyota Production System, TPS.
Exactly. That's the critical connection.
So how does TPS, which everyone knows for manufacturing efficiency, connect to environmental sustainability?
Well, that's the key. TPS, at its core, is about the complete elimination of waste, what they call muda in Japanese.
Right, muda, no waste.
And pursuing the most efficient methods to deliver high-quality vehicles, quickly, low cost, while making work easier for people. Those exact same principles that drive efficiency, they are incredibly powerful for environmental goals, too.
And TPS has two main pillars, doesn't it?
It does. The first is judoka, often translated as automation with a human touch.
Okay, what does that mean practically?
It means machines stop automatically if something's wrong, like a robot arm senses a problem on the line and just halts everything. Or, and this is crucial, operators can manually stop the line if they see something isn't right.
So intelligent automation, preventing defects, building quality right in.
Exactly. And it frees up people for higher value stuff like solving problems.
And underpinning judoka is kaizen, right?
Yep.
Continuous improvement.
Absolutely. It recognizes that human ingenuity is essential. Machines do their part, but it's the human ability to see, improve, innovate that drives the system forward. It's not just stopping waste, it's constantly finding better ways.
Got it. And the second pillar.
Just in time. The principle of making only what is needed, when it is needed, and in the amount needed.
Which must be vital with, what, 30,000 parts in a car? From suppliers all over the world?
Hugely important. Just in time sinks that whole massive supply chain, prevents bottlenecks, stops excess inventory, which is waste, by making sure materials arrive exactly when they're needed.
And that directly impacts energy use and resource efficiency too, I imagine.
Directly. Less storage needed, less handling, less energy wasted.
And what's key is that TPS isn't static, is it? It's not some fixed rule book.
Not at all. It's dynamic, constantly evolving through that daily Kaizen, those small improvements, and the philosophy of good thinking, good products. It's a perpetual cycle of getting better.
So bringing it all together, this is where it links back to the environmental efforts we talked about.
Exactly. The very same principles, eliminating waste, optimizing efficiency, continuous improvement that define TPS. They are directly applied to hitting those carbon neutrality goals, the recycling targets, the water reduction efforts.
So it's this deep-seated philosophy that makes these huge goals seem, well, maybe not easy, but achievable. It's the how behind the what.
Precisely. It's the operational DNA that enables the environmental ambition.
Okay, so what does this all mean for you, our listener? We've taken a pretty deep dive into Toyota's ambitious environmental targets. We've seen how their significant financial muscle makes these huge initiatives possible. And we've understood that foundational philosophy, TPS, that drives their whole approach to sustainability.
Yeah, it's clear this isn't just about making cars greener. It's a really comprehensive, integrated effort, creating a more sustainable future across the entire business, from, raw materials right through to recycling old cars and even community projects.
As you've heard, tackling these massive challenges like carbon neutrality, it takes an incredibly detailed, systematic approach, a deeply ingrained philosophy.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If principles like Kaizen and just-in-time can help transform a whole global industry towards a greener future. What small-scale Kaizen changes, what little improvements could you maybe implement in your own life for a more sustainable impact?
Yeah.
Something to think about.